we've created a brand that teens love. We've made puberty cool. Who could do that?
Welcome back to 40-Minute Mentor, the podcast on a mission to raise aspirations and inspire the next generation of category-defining founders, all in just 40 minutes. Today, we're joined by Jas Schembri-Stothart, co-founder of Luna, the fastest growing health and wellbeing startup for teen girls. Working with leading health and educational institutions, Jas and her co-founder, Jo Goodall, are building a digital companion enabling teenage girls to have a healthier and happier teenhood. Prior to building Luna, Jas was a management consultant and ran her own consulting business before getting her MBA, where she met her co-founder, and the idea for Luna was born. You may have come across some of the big milestones in Luna's journey so far, including being featured as App of the Day across the app stores, viral campaigns on TikTok, and their £1.2 million fundraise backed by Octopus Ventures, Syndicate Room, and prolific angel investors, including former 40-Minute Mentor guest Sharmadean Reed. As a proud father to a almost teen, well, not teen, she's 8, but going on 9 and she'll be there soon. A daughter, Sienna. I'm really excited about having Jas on the show to find out more about her journey with Luna so far and the no doubt bright future ahead. So a big welcome, Jas. Thank you for coming on 40-Minute Mentor. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I cannot believe how fast this year has gone, but feeling very excited to be here and share my story with you.
Oh, well, thank you very much for doing that. I've loved seeing from a bit of a distance all the amazing things you're doing, and your content's amazing, and it's such a great mission. So I can't wait for our audience to hear all about it. But before we dive into all things Luna, let's kick you off with some quick fire questions. So please finish the following sentences after me. Question 1. Success means to me...
Getting Luna into the hands of teenagers across the world.
Love it. The best day in my career to date was when?
I got my MBA from Side Business School and my mum was super proud.
Oh, that's an amazing one. One piece of advice I'd like to give my younger self is...
that you will smash it, have confidence, and do not compare yourself to others.
Such wise advice that we all need to hear right now. So thank you for sharing that. And my biggest failure to date is...
not building Luna quick enough and taking so long to take the entrepreneurial step.
Oh, do you know what? There's so many people, I reckon, listening to this that have got a brilliant idea that just don't have the confidence to go for it, or like something's holding them back. So I hope from hearing your story that we'll encourage more people to get out there and build, especially when they have like a really strong purpose and, can tackle some of the big problems in the world. Well, thank you for that, Jas. I'm really excited to dive into your backstory. And we're going to start at your upbringing, actually. I'd love to hear a bit more about your upbringing, your childhood, and how has that influenced kind of the person you are today. Tell us a bit more. And I'd love to also hear about any early career aspirations you may have had.
For sure. So for everyone listening, I'm Jas and I'm from South London, a very important point. But more importantly, I'm half Armenian, half Maltese, which I'm very proud of my heritage. And I think that has had a huge impact on who I am today. So I do like to try and get that in. And I guess in terms of my life before Luna, I come from 2 immigrant parents. So education has always been quite important. I was the first one to go to uni. Picking what school I went to was like a really, really big thing. And it's probably the reason why I did go and do my MBA in the end, because education is so important. But I guess with that, as was having a stable career and actually getting a career in the corporate world. So when it came to picking what I would do after secondary school, in the case of many immigrant families, there's always a set of options that you take. So, it's like law, medicine, or engineering. Given that I hate blood, it wasn't going to be medicine. I'm not great at numbers, so it wasn't going to be engineering. So I kind of fell into a law degree, which I went and did at Warwick University. Quickly realised that I'd also be a terrible, terrible lawyer and ended up in consulting. So I went and joined Deloitte. My parents were super proud. She got the job at the corporate career. So spent 5 years there and then started to realise, actually, I think I want to go and do my MBA. I don't think that this is for me. And obviously that made my parents extremely happy, thinking, okay, she's going to go and get an even better job after the MBA. But what did I do? I actually met my co-founder. That's where the idea for Luna came from, and ended up always going full circle, going back doing the founder life, not earning this snazziest, biggest salary, but actually doing something much more impactful. So I guess in summary, really like big on family, big on education. I think those things have really helped me become who I am today.
Oh, amazing. I'm sure that's very relatable to a lot of our listeners. I'm half Indian, so immigrant dad came to England back in the late 50s, and definitely, doctor family, kind of lawyer in the family. I can fully relate. And I chose not to go down any of those paths, and also chose the entrepreneurial route. So there we go. I think that seems to be a trend with a lot of our guests. You mentioned you spent a number of years at Deloitte as a consultant and started your own consulting business. So tell us a bit about those foundational years of your career. What sort of skills did you learn, and sort of how has that helped you sort of on your entrepreneurial path thereafter?
Definitely. I had a really good 5 years at Deloitte and then 2 years of working for myself afterwards. And I wouldn't change that for the world. I learned a lot around communication, working with different people. So I think one of the benefits of consulting is you're always working in different teams. And the reason I say that's a benefit is because if the project is a bit dry or you're not getting along with someone on a team, you know that there's an end date. But with that, you're learning to communicate and work with different types of people. So I think I learned a lot around working with people, communication, but then also you learn a lot so quickly because you're always on different projects. You're always having to pick up new skills, learn about different new industries. You're often just sort of thrown into things and taught to figure it out. And I think, yeah, that has also been so important with the journey that I'm on now as a founder, because that is what it is every day. You don't have endless resources, you don't have endless knowledge, you just got to figure it out. So, yeah, I think my foundation years at Deloitte were really great at giving me a baseline of what I needed wherever I really went next in my career, whether that was big corporate or becoming an entrepreneur. And then I guess going one step further and setting up my own consulting business, I was a one woman band. It meant that I was then taking what I'd learned, but taking that one step further, really, in terms of it was me doing all the execution, all the proofing, all the signing off myself, but then also all the sales that came with it and trying to get work for myself and doing all the finances behind that, working with my accountant. Again, I told you numbers wasn't my thing, the amount of tax deadlines I missed. So, yeah, I guess it was two very different stages of the consulting journey, with my own business sort of building on the foundations at Deloitte as well.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And it really is, I guess, a great grounding. It's not surprising a lot of people that come on this podcast have had a very similar journey, but also the MBA route that you chose to take. I think that's an interesting one. It's a question we get asked a lot actually as headhunters, should I take an MBA? So I'd love to understand why you felt that was the right step for you. And obviously it definitely worked out in your favor because you met your co-founder, but how did you enjoy the experience? How did it help you, now that you're a founder? Because I know it was clearly a very proud moment for you and your family to get onto such a prestigious program. But for anyone that might be listening to this going, okay, do I, don't I? What was your experience like, and what would your advice be to them?
Definitely. So to address your first question, like do I, don't I would definitely say like you don't need an MBA to do a business or to excel in your career at all. I think in the UK especially, potentially that might be different in different countries, especially the US, because a lot of my cohort were Americans. There were only 10 Brits out of 300 people.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, so we were a really, really small cohort. Of course, me and Joe, the two Brits, stuck together. But I think the MBA does much more than just, accelerate your career or enable you to start a business. It kind of, for me, really future-proofed what the next 10, 20 years look like for me, not just the immediate 2 to 5 years, which I think a lot of people probably think it does. And it just gave me time to myself as someone who was in my late 20s at the time, who knew a lot more about what I wanted and realized that, yes, I obviously want to make my family proud, but I also have to live my own life. It gave me the chance to explore that again and meet new people and figure out actually like what is the next step I want to take. And I think it's a real privilege to be able to do that and to have a year off, yeah, like I said, in your sort of late 20s, early 30s to do that. So it was a full-time MBA thrown back at Oxford, actually at the end of COVID. So it wasn't a very normal MBA, but we were on site, we were at the colleges, and it was great. And yeah, it was incredible. I think the exposure you get to different industries, the willingness of alumni to chat to you about their experience. Like, you can drop anyone a message with that sort of Said Business School logo in their LinkedIn and they'll say, yes, happy to have a chat. And just like the friends that you make for life, I think it's unheard of. If it was a normal MBA, I'd say travel as well. People are always traveling on it, going to head offices at different corporates and startups. But mine was mid-COVID, so that didn't happen. It was a blended virtual program. But honestly, I wouldn't have changed it for the world. I think I made much stronger relationships because everything was in like smaller groups and everyone was just making an extra effort to make it the most incredible year possible.
Oh, I'm so pleased to hear it was such a sort of formative time for you. And I've definitely heard that from others. And as you say, it doesn't need to be for everyone. I think one of the things I often say is that I think some people go into it for the wrong reasons. They think getting an MBA will get them a 30-40% increase on the salary. And I can tell you right now, that is not the case. I know often some MBA schools sell it like that, but that just is not the reality. But if you, like you said, if you are using it for very specific purposes, whether it's the network, whether it's just the kind of the learning, whether it's the kind of the opportunity to take a step back and really think about the next pivoting your career, so many benefits for sure. We need to talk about Luna. That's one of the big reasons we're here. And I think it's such a great business you're building. So how did you and Jo come up with the idea for it? And I guess for anyone that is listening to this that hasn't come across the business so far, please bring it to life for us. Tell us a bit more about what Luna is all about.
Definitely. And I am so sorry if you're listening to this and you have heard it, because I feel like I tell this story all the time. In a great way, though. I love it. And I probably should have said on the MBA, the best thing that I got out of it was a co-founder in a business, which I failed to do, but I'm saying it now. So Jo, if you're listening to this too, sorry, it was the best thing. But yeah, in short, I actually met my co-founder and my best friend Jo on the program. As I mentioned before, she was one of the only other Brits on the program. She also had a background in consulting. So I think we just naturally, the consultants always come together, the Brits always come together. And so we were friends from the start of the program. And during the MBA, you work through every module in groups, usually set groups. And there was one module on the MBA called the Entrepreneurship Project. It's a bit like The Apprentice meets Dragon's Den. And it's where you basically have to find a problem, come up with a solution, and then pitch it to real investors and your professors. It's the only module on the MBA where you can actually pick your own teams. So I was like, I'm done with the teams that I've been in. I'm going to pick like a badass female team and we are going to like absolutely smash this module because I'm a massive keynote like that. So I messaged Jo and I was like, let's form a team. She was like, yeah, let's do it with like 3 other women. And so with 3 other women from across the world, so North America, South America, Asia, joined us. And one night we got together and we were talking about the different problems that we wanted to solve for. And one of them was actually women's health. And we just kept talking about the women's health issues we were experiencing in our late 20s, early 30s. And actually, we just kept saying that nobody told us about these things when we were younger, regardless of where we were from in the world. And actually, had we had the information, had we had the confidence to speak up and realize it's okay to ask these things, it could have really impacted our late teens and 20s. And so we were like, okay, well, let's do that for our idea. Let's create this digital companion for teenagers around health and well-being, and we'll pitch this idea. And so we did that. We checked the market. Was there anything out there at the moment? No, there was stuff in the menopause space, fertility space, period space, but nothing really targeting teen health. So that was how the idea for Luna was born. And we pitched it to our professors and investors, including Octopus Ventures and Syndicate Room, thinking nothing of it. And one of the investors from Octopus turned around and was like, this is a really good idea. Like, who's doing it after the MBA? And truthfully, at the time, none of us thought this at all. I mean, Jo had a job offer sorted at a sports company. I thought I was going into VC. I had my internship lined up. But that actually was the light bulb moment. And it just got us ticking. And really, it got Jo ticking, because she then followed up with me and was like, I think there's something in this, Jas, and I think I really want to do it. Do you want to do it with me? And at the time I thought, this girl is mad. Like, she's giving up a massive potential salary opportunity, like secure job at this incredible high growth, like scale up. But then I was like, but I know it's a really good idea. And if it does well, like, I want in. So I said yes. And that is essentially how the idea for Luna happened. It started on an MBA project with just a group of keynotes wanting to get a great score and taking it really seriously, which nobody ever really does, to it becoming a real idea. And that's what we started working on full time after we graduated.
Wow, what a story. Love that. And it just goes to show, like, somebody, I guess, when it's an investor or certain people come along and just sort of validate an idea, and before you know it, it can really take on a life of its own. It's clearly evolved a lot since that original sort of idea. So tell us a bit more about that evolution of the business, where you're at, I guess, with it today.
Really interesting, James. And do you know what? I feel like we've almost gone full circle with the idea. Let me tell you why. So we obviously had this idea, part of a school project. We hadn't actually spoken to any teenagers because you weren't allowed to. So when the project finished, you were allowed to do whatever you wanted. And Jo then had this conversation with me, and I was like, okay, great idea. I see the potential, but I think I need to hear it from teenagers themselves, that there's really nothing else out there and that they would like this idea. So we both set up workshops at our old schools because we were like, where are teenagers? They're at schools. So Jo went up to Yorkshire, where she's from. I went to South London, and we talked them through the first version of Luna, which, by the way, was like hot pink and purple. We're not now, we're pastel. The platform itself was actually just about periods at the time, not holistic. And it was a platform for teenagers and parents to be on at the same time. Of course, the teenagers told us three things. Number one, we don't want the purple and the pink. We want calming, we want cool, we want pastel. We're like, okay. Number two, Jas, Jo, it's not just periods. Like, it needs to be broader than that. Like, we want mental health, we want body image, we want confidence. Like, it's everything. And number three, we do not want our parents seeing like what we are asking, because we just won't use this platform. So you need to like get them off. So you're like, okay, we hear you, we hear you. We want to build a product that teens are going to use, right? So we went away and we were like, gosh, this was so insightful. We need to like do a roadshow across school. So basically, like everyone that we knew from primary school, secondary school, where do you work? Do you work in a school? Do you know anyone at school? Set up a roadshow, met 20 schools, and yeah, basically kept hearing the same thing. So the first version of the app basically was just for teenagers. But the reason I said we go full circle now is we spent like the last year and a half building an amazing brand and product that teenagers love. Our TikTok growth is organic. We're getting downloads every day without ad spend or anything. We've created a brand that teens love. You know, we've made puberty cool. Who could do that? But now, obviously, we are in our revenue generation era. Parents need to be on board to buy the subscription for their teenagers. And basically, we've now been thinking about how we bring parents onto this journey, not only because they are the payers of the app, but actually because they need help too. And, you know, you said you're a dad of an 8-year-old. There's not that much out there supporting tween and teen parents. And we are sitting on a bed of insights and knowledge from the teens that we can share back to parents. And so we are now like working on the parent arm of this app and what that looks like, really. We will keep, you know, teenagers stuff private and keep it anonymous, but I think we can play back and actually help parents on this journey. So like I said, we have almost done a full circle, because to begin, that was like not the case at all. But yeah, our early testing is showing like that is the way forward, and parents are messaging us like, give us more information, like give us more, we want to help. So I think there's a huge opportunity for us there.
100%. And I can really relate. You know, I think parenthood is a real voyage into the unknown, and especially now with social media and just this, it's a bit of a minefield, isn't it? And I think for me, I love my daughter. I want to be the best and the most supportive dad I can be, but sometimes I'm like, I wouldn't have the first clue where to start, you know, as she grows up. And I don't want to be like my parents. I want to be approachable and understanding and supportive. I love my parents, but they had no clue about certain things. And I think if there are solutions to support parents in this, and also teens themselves, I think it's just such a great idea. So I am fully on board. I guess I'd love to hear about some of the highlights that you've sort of had on this journey, because clearly you're already getting a lot of traction, and as you said, you're making puberty cool. But what have been the highlights for you?
I think a personal highlight was getting that TikTok growth going for us, and actually using TikTok in a positive way, because the whole reason we exist is to combat misinformation. There's a lot of misinformation on TikTok, but it can be used in a positive way. And the reason I say it's a big win is because marketing growth sits in my world. And I do remember being like, how on earth are we going to get more than 2 downloads a day? And just being like, we don't have the money to pour on ads. Like, we don't have the facilities that like other companies do, yet that's the expectation on us. So I think when we unlocked the lever that is like community-led TikToks and community-led growth, that for me was like a massive moment, because a lot of investors were telling us like teens will never use this, we'll never be able to grow this. And that for me is like, okay, no, like we found what that flywheel is now. Like we just need to keep doing it. So I think that was like a really proud day for me. I think another one was also when Joe and I were asked to be Apple's International Women's Day campaign as well. Like that was absolutely iconic to be asked out of all of the apps on Apple's app stores to come in for like a photo shoot and to literally be the face of their campaign after just being around for, I think it's only 6 months then. It was really early in our journey. I think that was also massive as well. We should take more time to reflect. I think we're moving at such pace. Even getting our first paid subscription, we didn't even know the paywall had gone live. It had gone live by mistake, and suddenly we were like, "Oh wait, hang on, there's been a chance?" And it was like the rubbish version of the paywall, the test version. That was a good moment. So many moments. I know you said one, but I said a couple there. Sorry.
Before we hear more from today's 40-minute mentor, I wanted to tell you about the upcoming Leadership Unleashed open cohorts starting in January. Sign-ups are now open for you to become part of this vibrant new leadership community. You really don't want to miss it. The open cohort is your chance to join a diverse cohort of leaders from different organizations, industries, and parts of the world to build the most critical behaviors and transform into a high performer. This isn't your typical leadership development program where you just show up and listen to lectures. Split into 7 remote workshops, the open cohort follows a coaching-led approach where you'll be actively involved and can turn your learnings into habits in your day-to-day. In fact, here's some feedback from a previous Series B Tech Scale-Up participant. This is no doubt the best leadership course I have ever attended. It feels tailored to me and my own personal working style. I honestly can't recommend this program enough, so if you want to learn more about what to expect or hear from previous learners, get in touch today with the Unleashed team on their email. Say hello at unleashed.company. Now, back to today's 40-minute mentor. We got to celebrate the successes. Entrepreneurship is hard, and especially when you are building something there's such a big opportunity, it's so impactful. We have to celebrate the wins because we don't do it enough. I think so often it's so focused on building and moving things forward that you don't take enough time to actually give yourself a pat on the back. And I think it's good, and it's important also for others to hear that might be in the trenches right now. There's always learnings, aren't there? There's always positives to take from building. I say that because I'm also about to flip it to the challenges and the mistakes made. We really would like to talk about that as well, because I think that's where you often learn the most. So what have some of those been? And particularly if you have made a mistake or if you have come across a gnarly challenge, I'd love to know what helped you get through those sort of difficult moments.
I definitely think when I was talking about before, the time when we were really struggling to get downloads and not really having like the budget to put behind it, I remember one of our advisors saying, because we just raised our first round of funding, or we had just got a grant, I can't remember, but we were being very cautious with our spending. And I remember an advisor being like, you have to spend to grow. Like you can't, there's no point just preserving your runway and someone else seeing the opportunity and sort of getting in there. So perhaps a learning there is, well, it was a learning, because then we were like, okay, we found this community-led growth thing works. Like, let's just put some cash behind it as well and drive it even further. But it took a conversation with one of our advisors to help us do that and to stop us, I guess, hoarding the cash. And it's true. You need it to grow and to reach people who will then eventually like convert to subscriptions and to downloads. So I think that is definitely an important learning. And I'm sure anyone who's a founder probably resonates with that, because there's an obsession with checking your bank account all the time. I think another thing that I maybe learned the hard way is with hiring, which again is probably like your space, you know this really well. But I actually had never hired before doing Luna. Like, yes, I'd managed teams in my consulting career, but I'd never hired someone myself. And I wouldn't say it's like a mistake. I would say it's a learning. But, when there isn't a fit with the person for various reasons, like whether it wasn't a skill set match or, a cultural match or whatever it is, like it's beneficial for both you and the other person to have that conversation really early, because they're probably not happy in the role. Like you're feeling frustrated. And I think that experience for me probably took longer than it needed to. And I have learned from that. But I guess it's one of those things that you only learn from experience. So I think, yeah, don't underestimate how important the hiring and the people element in all of this is as well. Even if you are a small team of 7 like us, like your people are so important. And the first 10 people as well are just the most important, because they are the future of the culture as you scale and grow as well. So yeah, I think those two things are probably my biggest learnings. I wouldn't say they're like mistakes.
No, but great learnings and really important ones. I think arguably the most important hires you'll make that will make or break the business are the first 5 to 10 hires. So, and you will make mistakes. It is when you've never done it before, it is so difficult to get everything right. And hiring is not an exact science, but there are things you can do. You can learn from past mistakes. You can put structure and rigor behind processes. You can get external eyes on it. You can bring in specialist support. And I think there are lots of levers you can take to give yourself a better chance of getting the right person, but it is difficult. And actually, I think it's it's an important experience to go through making hiring mistakes. Sometimes it's never fun, but I think your point around acting quickly if you have got it wrong is so important. And it's something that I failed to do, which is ironic given my day job is helping founders hire. I found it one of the hardest things for myself, because you're so close to it and it's your baby. And you also, when you're an empathetic person that really cares about the people you bring into your business, it's a really difficult conversation to have.
Yeah, you want the best out of them, and you want the best. Yeah, you want the best for them, don't you? And you don't want to make these difficult decisions, but sometimes you have to.
It's sometimes the best thing to do for everybody. And what I found is that it can have such a damaging effect by not acting on the wider business, that it's always better to have that upfront conversation. I guess coming on to another topic that is very prevalent in this market, it comes up all the time on the podcast, is fundraising. And you have raised from some great VCs and angels. So would love to know kind of sort of why you went down this route. What were some of the biggest learnings you've taken from that process? And what has been the positive impact from the investment that you've raised?
Yeah, so I guess in terms of why we went down this route, well, I spent all of my savings on an MBA, so there was going to be no bootstrapping of this business because that wasn't physically possible. But also because I think this is a VC backable business. There are teenagers all over the world with parents who all want a solution. So, this is a scalable, we want it to scale, and Joe and I are excited to be the ones to do that. So yeah, we went after sort of angels, VCs, and external investors, as many like tech startups do. We actually have raised our capital in sort of 2 tranches. So tranche 1 was more actually leaning into people who knew us. And when I say that, we went very much like old bosses, and we were like, hey, like nobody knows us in the angel VC world, but we have this great idea. Like how good we are, how hardworking we are, like please can we have some money? And they were actually happy to do it, because obviously there are some great tax benefits, and they were like, actually we love this idea, we love you guys. And once we were able to get a solid bit of capital there, we were then able to go to angels and other investors to get them on board with the idea. And so we've got an amazing array of people who back us, from CEOs of companies, prominent doctors and medics, prominent figures in women's health, or female ambassadors like Sharmadine you mentioned before, but then also some incredible VCs as well. And you asked like what the benefits of that is, and that is really the networks they have. So many of our investors happen to have children who go to schools and they know other parents. So for us, we lean into our investors for distribution because that costs us nothing, but also for introductions to other people, to organizations we might want to work with. Our investors to date have genuinely been massive advocates of Luna. They're there supporting our LinkedIn posts. If we've released a report, they'll be there to share it. So with us, Joe and I, we send like really meaty monthly updates to our investors. with what we've been up to, but also like clear asks. And we're really lucky to have amazing investors that do actually really want to help us and, really want to get this product out even further than when it is now. So for us so far, it feels right. I think we're really lucky to have great investors. I know some people have had like very different experiences, but we have also been quite selective, I guess, in terms of who we wanted to reach out to and have conversations with as well, which is really difficult when you're raising in really, really tough environments. But the reality is you don't want to work with people that are just going to be on your case all the time. And you get those feelings with when people are emailing you and are on calls with you. So yeah, I think we're lucky. We've got some good matches going on.
Love that. Yeah, it's so important. This is a long-term partnership. So having people that feel incredibly invested and are supportive and getting that kind of chemistry fit right is so important. Any tips or advice for anyone that's going through the fundraising process at the moment, or maybe trying to decide between whether to go down the VC route or the angel route? Any learnings or advice for anyone that might need to hear it right now?
Yeah, I think have a strategy in place. And our strategy was nobody knew us. We never built a business before. Like, why on earth are you going to back two Deloitte consultants? And so our strategy was like, go after people who know us. One thing I learned quite late on was that you don't just have to go after people who might be able to put big checks in. There are some amazing mechanisms allowing people to put smaller checks in, like crowdfunding, or platforms like Odin, where you can put slightly bigger checks in and they all sort of roll up. So I think in terms of this strategy, I would definitely look at doing that as a first phase. People who know you, who back you, who are going to be like, yes, I know this person's got this. Then when you've got like a bit of cash behind you, then you start going to angel investors, but you have to be really targeted. Like, there's no point just spamming everyone that has angel in their LinkedIn. Like, you have to do your research. And then if you can like get introductions to angels, that will work so much better than cold emails, which I know is like really difficult when nobody knows who you are. But that's why going to founder events and trying to build connections is really important. Again, something I only learned like in the second round of funding. And then once you've got sort of all of your friends or first network on board, and then you've got more angels, if you feel it's right to get VCs in, then do. But VCs more than ever now are asking for a lot more. And so I'd question, like, is a VC the right time to bring on board? Like, are you really at the right stage to be having these conversations, or are you going to waste your time? And truthfully, like at the start, we spoke to a lot of VCs. We didn't even have a product, and we know that is just not enough. So I would really just question, like, are you just going to be wasting your time speaking to VCs now? And actually, could that time be spent building a bit more traction and stuff? But, for some people, maybe it is the right time. So that's what I would say. Be strategic and spend your time talking to the right angels and the right VCs, and don't just do a sort of spray and pray approach, because it just won't work. And it'd be really demoralizing.
Yeah, really, really good and important advice. Thank you, Jas. Just, I guess, coming on to talk a bit more about teenagers and tweenagers. This is the market you're targeting, obviously a massive market. So, you can really see the scale and the potential. I could imagine it's not the easiest thing to do to market a product to such a large group, a diverse group, I guess, an intersection of society who are constantly changing their needs, etc. And times move so fast. So how have you found that process of really getting to know that demographic and making sure that your product really sort of speaks to them?
It's a really good question. And do you know what? I actually think it's harder getting into parent mode, having not been a parent. So I'm not a parent. Now that I'm sort of focusing my marketing effort on that, the teen bit, I've been a teen. That's way more relatable.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
But no, in all seriousness, I am a millennial. I'm not a Gen Z or a Gen Alpha. And like I said at the start, we thought hot pink and purple was cool. It's not cool. And that was like the wake up moment for us. That was like, if we are going to build a brand and a product that teens want to use, we need to get the teens like involved from the jump. So after we left these schools, we then asked the schools to email these students to say, does anyone want to like do work experience with us? Like, does anyone want to become like an ambassador? It's on the side of school, but they'll get exposure to this company. And loads of them signed up. And then basically Joe and I would send them weekly missions, like, oh, what do you prefer? Like these screens or these screens, like this branding or this branding? And they would, if we were late for the weekly missions, they'd be like, when's the mission coming? So we started, I guess, building a bit of a cult following from the early days. But no, in all seriousness, we basically just kept building these number of members that were like really loyal users. And the number has just continued and still continues. And yeah, we now have like product ambassadors who work with my co-founder Jo on a bi-weekly basis. They get on calls, they talk about different features, etc., etc. In half terms, they come into our office and we do our roadmap with them. And then I work with the social media brand ambassadors who will tell me what's trending, what's not trending. They basically keep me on the beat. And yeah, they basically run our social strategies. So that is how we have built a great brand for Gens Alpha, because they truly run the show at Luna.
That is so great, and such a great way of bringing them into the business and to really learn and contribute to the growth. I mean, that is incredible. What better way to understand that demographic? I love that. I guess I went to school in the kind of 90s and noughties, and life has changed so much for teenagers. The pressure of growing up is so different now with social media and constant comparison to others online. It terrifies me as a dad of an 8-year-old that's been going to secondary school in 2-3 years. It really does scare me. So how are you seeing this affect this current generation? And what advice do you have for parents like myself and many that will be listening to this about how to sort of protect their kids and also support their kids when it comes to health and well-being, or just anything else that you're kind of learning from building Luna?
Well, what I would say is like many of the feelings that we experienced as teenagers still exist today. They're just amplified like 10, 100 times because of the online presence there is, and because of that constant comparison or seeing things that you might not have or that you might want. And so I think even as adults who might not have been brought up in sort of digital generation that these teens are, like we can relate to like what they are going through. And so in terms of advice like that, I mean, when we've asked teenagers like, well, what do you want? They've said that they just want an open line of communication with their parents. And that's not necessarily them being like, oh, well, in my day it was like this, or like, oh yeah, I used to feel the same. It's more just reassuring them that you are there for them and that you might understand what they're going through, but that they can always come to you when they need it. And I think being available, even if you've had the most crap day at work or you're so stressed, like being there for them and putting everything down and going for a walk or going for a drive or whatever it is to have that conversation is really important. And yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not a parent, but when I was reading this feedback, I was like, oh, I could totally see me just being so bogged down in work and ignoring that sometimes. So I think that's one thing. I think the second thing is that teenagers want support and that they want help. And I think a lot of parents maybe might think, oh, my teen's not open to like feeling better or improving in this and what, but actually like they do, but they just want choice in that decision, or they want a voice in that decision in terms of how they get help. And so I think like a choice-based approach and giving them options in terms of how they might want to approach this really works. I think perhaps that's what they've really liked about Luna, that they've had a voice, that they've had a choice, and that they've inputted into something rather than it just being pushed on them. So I think, yeah, making decisions with them really, really helps. And then lastly, and I'm not just trying to push like Luna as, you know, digital agenda, but this is a digital generation and they want to be using platforms that they understand and that they like and that they relate to. And I think parents should also try and be open to that, that there are some amazing apps out there that help with well-being, that help with mental health, that help with their periods, that help them with fintech, you know, managing their finances. And this is the way that young people learn, right? They learn through digital technologies today in 2024. So yeah, those are the things I would say. But I think the most important thing is that teens do want to get better and they do want boundaries when it comes to social media and phones, but they want help from their parents. They want to make those decisions together rather than it be like forced on them and taken away. But you know, I will say I'm not a parent, and if any parents listen to this, like this girl's talking rubbish, I'm so sorry. It might all change in a couple of years' time.
No, not at all. Like I think at the end of the day, you're getting live feedback from teens, and I guess every dynamic in a family is a little bit different. But from what you've said, it seems certainly really important. One, to meet them when it comes to things like everything is digital now for teens, and actually to embrace that and to understand that that's how teenagers learn, and to one, get on board with that, and then two, it's about open lines of communication. And even if, like, at the end of the day, parents are not going to just agree to everything that their teens want, but having a conversation. And I think that's, like, when I think back to my childhood and just how emotionally repressed a lot of older generations have been, in terms of not talking about their feelings, and things like mental health being pushed right down, and even just so many things in society. This is what's great about the younger generation. They will engage in conversation, they will talk about how they're feeling, but we have to engage them in that. And I think that's something, as I'm learning a lot from being a dad myself. I would never tell my parents that I loved them when I was a kid, and they would very rarely tell me. I know they loved me, and we have a lot of love in our family, but we wouldn't necessarily say those words that often. Whereas I tell my daughter, I'm embarrassingly tell her, like, multiple times a day how much I love. So even these little things, right? But for me, it's important. She'll soon tell me to stop doing that because it's really embarrassing. But yeah, I think things are changing, and I just think it's great that there are businesses like Luna that are helping to sort of bridge the gap between parents and kids. So I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, we are not here to replace a parent. We get so many questions in that'll be like, I don't know how to tell my parent this. And we'll just be like, here are different ways you can do it. So as you said, we are there to open up the conversation 100%.
Yeah, it's like that fun auntie or uncle that you go to for, like, you don't want to talk to your parents, but you will talk to your fun auntie or uncle. It's great.
Do you know what, James? We used to be called the fun sisters, and now we've gone to aunties. So I'm like, we've definitely aged in the last 3 years.
Love that. Love that. No, everybody needs a fun auntie. We're sadly coming to an end, and we've got 2 wrap-up questions coming up. But before we do, just wanted to touch upon, I know that you're a big believer in community and supporting your fellow founders, and we're both part of a founders community called Founders. So I wanted to get your thoughts on why community is so important, and how being a part of founder communities and just communities in general has helped you as a founder over the years.
I just think the only other person who really gets what you're going through is another founder. And like my husband has been incredible, but it's just still, like, as much as he tries, you just don't understand that, like, pressure that comes with being a founder, and like the roller coaster and the highs and the lows. And I think for me, just being able to, like, voice note someone and be like, oh, I've had a terrible day, or like, oh my God, this amazing thing's happened, to someone who truly gets, like, what those waves look like, it's just invaluable. Or for them to pick you up when you are having, like, a really low moment, or for someone to be like, actually, I had this issue before, like, let me give you some advice. I just think that is incredible. And I guess a build on that as well is the power of community, and people knowing people is also massive. And as a founder, you don't have much time to find suppliers or find hires or whatever. So to be able to, call you up, James, be like, James, I need someone, like, can you help me out? Like, that is just incredible. So I think that as well, like, network is amazing. And I wish I just did it earlier. I think I always thought, oh, I don't have time for this. Like, I need to be building. And it was only really last year that I was like, actually, like, I do need a support network around me. That's not just my friends and family, like people who really get it. And so I really started to invest time into finding which communities I wanted to be part of, and yeah, getting involved there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I wish I'd have done it earlier, and it's been one of the most impactful sort of things for me in the last few years, just having that support network. And often it is just venting and just being heard by somebody that gets it. But peer mentorship as well is just, like, really powerful, and it's also often very inspiring, and just something that I think all founders should have. So yeah, thank you for sharing your experience. We are sadly at a close. We have 2 final questions. The podcast is, of course, called 40-Minute Mentor. So I have to ask, if you could be mentored by anyone, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
I think I would go for Michelle Obama for 2 reasons.
Strong choice.
Well, 3 reasons. Number one, she obviously does loads of work in the youth impact space, and I think that aligns massively to what we're doing with Luna. Number 2, she's a mother herself, so she can teach me the ways of how to be reaching all these amazing mums. But lastly, like, she's just an icon, like, real sense of humor, knows how to deliver a speech. I think she would just give me like the real talk when I needed it. And sometimes you just need like a bit of real talk. And I feel like Michelle will be the one that'll be giving it to me. So
Love that.
yeah, I think she'd be a pretty amazing mentor if I could pick anyone.
Yeah, I mean, me too. I would absolutely love her as a mentor, but it makes a lot of sense that she'd be your choice. So I hope that dream comes reality and you get to meet her at some point.
Yeah, manifesting it.
Yeah, let's put it out in the world. And final question, what last piece of career or life advice would you like to leave our listeners with?
If you have a business idea and you validate it and you think it's a good one, it only gets harder to do as you get older. And so obviously do all your validation analysis, like figure out if it is the right time in your life. But if there's an indicator that it could be, I would say go for it, because it's hard, don't get me wrong, but it's the best thing I've ever done. And obviously I don't want you to all throw up in your mouths, but I genuinely love my job and wake up every day happy to do it. So I think that would genuinely be my best bit of advice. And hopefully someone out there is now inspired to go and do something that they've been thinking about.
It's great advice, a great story, a great business. Jas, it's been a real privilege and a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on 40 Minute Mentor. We're recording this on a Friday afternoon. It's the perfect way to end a great week, go into the weekend feeling inspired. And I know your story will inspire our audience too. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I really hope that you found it useful and inspiring. If we have left any questions unanswered, or if you have any feedback or guest recommendations for future series, then please make sure you get in touch on info@jbmc.co.uk. I often get asked by listeners how you can help us spread the word about 40 Minute Mentor. There are two simple ways you can help. Firstly, share this episode on your preferred social media platform, and LinkedIn is probably where I'm most likely to see it. And you can also leave us a review on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Every share on social media and review left on the podcast platforms really helps us to get 40 Minute Mentor in front of new audiences and share the power of mentorship even further. Thank you so much for your ongoing support, and I look forward to seeing you again next Wednesday for even more pocket-sized mentorship.